Hey there, friends, trolls, passerbys, neighbors, villagers. I appreciate you being here. My name is Dave Paulides. This is the canammissing project, and this is my video channel. US, Montana, I appreciate both of you very much. And I gotta admit that I'm a little weak today. It's 7 degrees outside in the Great North. And I just don't have it in my heart to go out there and freeze my butt off. It's just rough out there. It's rough in the silo right now, but we're gonna do okay. And right from the get-go, I have some really good letters for you. It says, Dave, I love watching your videos and thought I'd share a bit of information with you. I'm a biologist for the Hoopa Valley tribe, which I know you know well. Yeah, Hoopa Valley, I wrote the book, The Hoopa Project, after spending 2 years on the reservation there. Had special access, and I met several of the biologists, although I didn't know this person when I was there. Before my biology days in my 20s, I lived in remote Trinity County near Bully Choop Mountain. There I had a very crazy experience, which I'll eventually share with MUFON. It seems they are charging to access their database now, but luckily I found my story, which was personally vetted via a phone interview with MUFON rep Dev Rugney, Assistant State Director of NorCal, on this website. So first of all, the location he's talking about this is Redding, California. And this is Shasta Lake, Whiskey Town Reservoir, beautiful place. And I've spent a lot of time all up through here. It's a city called Hayfork that I wrote a lot about in the Hoopa Project and in Tribal Bigfoot. Just to give you Douglas City, Weaverville, Junction City, Anderson, Cottonwood. This is the gateway to Lake Shasta, and Mount Shasta's up here. So yeah, I know this area super well. In this region out in here, this is the Pacific coast right about here. This area in here gets real wild, very quick, strange things out there. So my friend and I were driving up Bully Choop Mountain late at night around 2 a.m. and stopped at a snowbank and continued walking. We were both remarking we could feel the mountain pulsing with this amazing energy. It felt amazing, but it's hard to describe. It just felt like we were on top of the world. All of a sudden, we were both stopped to look at city lights of Redding far down the valley below, as we had done many times before. We often came up there after band practice. All of a sudden, we saw what appeared to be a car headlight proceeding up a nearby ridge of Bully Choop to the southeast of our location. It was bright orange and red in color, made no sound, did not pulsate, but appeared intelligently controlled. We were surprised because there was no road that we knew of out there, but figured it could be an ATV or dirt bike. The light proceeded to take a turn directly toward us, thus leaving the ridgeline to hover in open air. That's when we knew it wasn't a car or an ATV, because cars and ATVs don't fly. It came right towards us. It freaked us out and ran away. I freaked out and ran away, while my friend stayed and looked at it. After I ran out of sight, I ran back to see the bright orange-red spherical object slowly going away towards the west of Redding. It was crazy, and to this day I have no idea what it was, but I know whatever it was wanted to chat, or at least say hi. Please keep in mind this was 2010. We didn't carry cell phones around everywhere, so didn't have them at the time. Even if we did, pictures would have been crap. There are a few other accounts in the MUFON database regarding orange orbs in and around Bully Choop. Dev told me she remembered a story about when the Forest Service used to let people camp out in the fire lookout on top of the mountain. She said a woman claimed to have seen an orange orb traveling up the mountain exactly as I had seen. This account was never published, but I found it fascinating. She saw exactly what we saw up there. Another account near Indian Creek Lodge in Douglas City told of seeing orbs in the direction of Bully Choop. Something strange is going on up there. What it is, I couldn't tell you. What I can tell you is that this thing came right over to us from the void of our towering view, and it had some kind of business with us. My friend was in a trance, totally and completely accepting that this craft had good intentions. I did not fall under the spell, and when I ran away, the craft diverted course and left. I often wonder what would have happened if I had stayed put. You tell a lot of stories about what happens if people go missing, and it makes me wonder what happens before. Perhaps this event I experienced may shed some light on it. If anything, it's a cool story. Of note, the geology of Bullychoop is one where gold is abundant, and there are miles of gold mines up there. It's an area where two geologic rock types converge, lighter granite and darker metamorphic, where the two meet right under Bullychoop. It's where the gold formed. Perhaps that has something to do with this anomaly. Keep up the great work. Well, thank you. And it's an interesting story for a couple of reasons. First of all, that area right there at Bullychoop, going west and then north, has a lot of Bigfoot activity and a lot of history of Bigfoot activity. And contrary to what a lot of people want to say, these orbs are seen in very close proximity to where Bigfoot sightings are also seen. And there's a lot of information out of Pennsylvania about that specific association. Do I think it just happens to be a coincidence? No. I think there's a direct association between the two topics. Hi, Dave. I'm not sure if this is the correct email to use, but I need to tell my story. I'm at age now, and I really don't care if I'm believed or not, but just want to tell my story and be heard. I'm 57 years old and live in Victoria, Australia. This could be a long email, so do with it what you will. But back around 78, I've come to now realize it was when a young pilot disappeared off the coast after reporting light around his plane. Anyway, my younger brother and I were riding our push bikes down our private track towards the main road one night about 10 p.m. The track's about 700 meters long. It's about 2,200 feet for us USers, with a farmhouse on a hill, which we came from. As we started on our ride towards the main road, my brother asked me what those lights were. I didn't bother looking and just replied, "It's a plane." My brother asked me 3 or 4 more times as we rode to the main road, and I responded with the same answer, again not looking. When we reached the intersection of the track and the road, we stopped, and this time I looked up at my brother, who was asking me about it. I couldn't believe what I was looking at, and it's hard to explain, but I'll do my best. There were sets of lights in pairs, about 6 of them. They would appear, then disappear, and reappear, either close or far away. The lights were like train lights at a crossing, offset but flashing 100 times faster. They could be as big as a dinner plate or way bigger depending on how close and how they got close, we don't know. The pulsing light was white and very bright and strong. By strong I mean they hurt my eyes and I could feel the pulsing in my chest. Then one light came down and lit up the trees in the paddock. I told my brother to start riding home and I gave him a head start, but still passed him with 100 meters to go before the house. I got my father out of bed to see, but there was nothing there and they were gone. We didn't have any missing time that we know of, but it shook us up pretty bad. Dave, I have to say, I felt like they didn't have good intentions and the lights gave off an angry vibe. There was a report in the local paper about 2 days later about strange lights in the area, but it wasn't made by us. I have seen strange lights in the night sky since, zigzagging, odd formations, but nothing quite like that night. And quite frankly, I don't want to see him again. You know, I'm open to seeing that kind of stuff. I think it's a life experience. But that's my personal view. Story 2. Being a farm boy, I was a keen hunter. In my late teens, early 20s, I loved to spotlight for rabbits and foxes. I'm a night owl by nature, and spotlighting for hours at night seemed natural to me. I'd done this for years, carrying a motorbike battery and a small spotlight, a .22 rifle, and our 12-gauge shotgun, and never had a problem with anything. I'm 6'4", all old country boy. Not much intimidated me except electric fences. Don't like them. One night I went out, packed with my spotlight and gun, walked out to an open paddock, got about halfway across, then something came over me. David, I don't know what it was and still don't, but something stopped me dead in my tracks and had me terrified. My feet were planted in the ground and every fiber of my being was telling me to run. I had the spotlight pointing in every direction around me, but I couldn't see anything. After about 2 or 3 minutes, I slowly started to get control of myself. I did a complete 360, slowly checking every detail I could make out in the spotlight, but still nothing. I then began to move off again. That has never happened to me before or since, and I have never been that terrified before or since either. I'm not here to give you answers about what was happening with the missing. I haven't a clue to what's going on, but there's something very, very odd indeed. I feel you're passionate about mental health and understand it completely. I personally suffer from bipolar and only got diagnosed in 2010. Luckily, I got on the right medication that works for me. Key is being on the medication that works. There are quite a few medications out there, but it's finding the one that works for the individual, and the time seems to be the hardest. I'm no science expert or doctor, but I have a theory about climate change, whales and dolphins breaching themselves, strange birds and animals' behavior, and our mental health. Please bear with me on this. There's no doubt that humans have contributed to climate change, but there's something else happening to Earth that nearly never get any airtime or mentioned at all. Animals, whales, dolphins, and birds all use the magnetic pole to the north to navigate. And folks, our magnetic poles are weakening. They're also moving. They have been for the past 10 years, and I know of, and in the past 5 years, have weakened faster than what they predicted. I feel that we of humans are affected as well by the weakening polar magnetic fields. I also believe mental health will get much worse as the polar magnetics weaken more in the years to come. Anyway, just a theory, could be completely wrong. Thank you. Well, that's a pretty interesting theory, I gotta say. But not only is the magnetic pole weakening, it's moving significantly. And I should say we looked into this a couple of years ago. It was fascinating. Dear Dave, thank you for your valuable mission. I very much appreciate your devotion to the investigation of the hundreds of heartbreaking missed loved ones in the U.S., Canada, and elsewhere. And since you asked for reports from people who experienced strange occurrences, here's my honest story. I remember it crisply, August 1st, 2015, about 10 p.m. A comfortable night with a clear sky and stars. At that time, I owned a home and land containing a large spring-fed pond, forest, and some open acreage in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, 3 miles north of Shingleton, all adjacent to the Hiawatha National Forest, Superior State Forest, and Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore, Lake Superior. Let me stop there. That area of the Upper Peninsula of Michigan has more strange disappearances of people and airplanes than a lot of places in our world. And the stories are very, very odd. And on our U.S. cluster map, there's a lot of disappearances up there. So when this person started to write me, I was paying attention right away. The mostly full moon was rising above the distant spruce trees on the eastern horizon beyond my horse pasture. Standing outside about 100 feet from my front door, I was admiring the moonrise, accompanied with my 2 dogs. On my forehead, I was wearing a Petzl lamp turned on to the red bulb. My border collie saw it first and facing north began furiously barking, then my Sheltie, turning immediately and imagining a possible confrontation with a black bear or timber wolf. Instead, I saw a most astonishing sight. In the sky approaching us due north in the direction of Lake Superior was a huge vertical oval-shaped configuration of literally hundreds of stunningly bright, glittering, sparkling, moving lights, nearly as bright as a welder's torch. The lights were a mixed combination of only 2 colors, purplish, red, and white. All were cascading downwards and back up apparently randomly. Many of the lights appeared to be drooping or dripping from the object but did not fall to the ground, just moved back, then up and down again. No sound whatsoever, completely, utterly silent. My jaw just dropped. Never in all my years had I seen anything like that. As the object slowly floated nearer, my border collie sprinted for the door, pawing to let in, while my Sheltie fought to be free from her leash. All the while I stood there, solid, without fear, riveted to the ground, transfixed, mesmerized by the dazzling lights. Whatever it was continued to display its beauty and approached nearer. It occurred to me that it knew that it definitely wanted and had my attention. However, it might not be a good idea for me to have its attention. A strong wave of uneasiness and danger ran through me. I reached up, clicked off my lamp, and I breathed a prayer to Christ. At that very moment, it abruptly turned to the east, and the many sparkling lights ceased, like a switch had been flipped. In their place, there was one odd pulsing red light with a very faint white light following. The strange object continued to its new easterly course and in a few minutes disappeared. Shaken, and after returning to my house with my dogs, I felt a lingering impression that I had escaped somewhat malevolent, perhaps something that originated from the beautiful side of evil. I have been hesitant to relate to others this experience and kept it to myself, knowing reactions would likely be unbelief and amusement. But I now bring it forth to you, Dave, without embellishment. Perhaps in some way it can contribute to your research of interest. Please feel free to share this. Thank you. Couple of things. I've known a lot of people to experience almost exactly that. And it's as though the intelligence in the craft is reading our minds. And maybe they wanted to instill fear, or maybe they wanted to gauge your response. Maybe it's a science mission for them. And they have the ability to read minds, maybe read our heart rate, read our internal reactions. Maybe it's science so far and above what we know that we couldn't even begin to understand it at this point in our world. But I've heard this many times through MUFON, etc. Next story. Okay, this is a Bloomington, Illinois paper. The FBI is offering up to a $10,000 reward for information on the final hours of a university graduate student who disappeared in August and was later found dead in a river. Jelani Day, a 25-year-old Illinois State grad student and Danville native, was reported missing on August 25th, the day after he was last seen in Bloomington. His body was found in the Illinois River near Peru, 60 miles north of the ISU campus on September 4th. Authorities determined he died by drowning, but have said his death remains under investigation. His mom said law enforcement officials have all but told her they believe her son died by suicide, which she dismissed out of hand. She said her son was not depressed or overburdened, had no school-related financial troubles, and was studying speech pathology at Illinois State with aspirations of becoming a doctor. She's hired a civil rights attorney. The FBI said it's offering a reward of $10,000 for substantial information regarding Day's final hours leading to the identification of new witnesses or evidence. This story grabbed me for one big reason. This type of deaths have been happening for many years. And I wrote about them in Missing 411, A Sobering Coincidence. Many times it's a student, a very smart student, who disappears. There's nobody who sees them hours before they have just completely disappeared. And nobody knows where they went. And then suddenly they find them in a body of water, drowned. Many times the people are outstanding swimmers. Drowning makes no sense. And in past cases, I have heard authorities say, well, the person was depressed and they probably took their life. But there's no evidence that they took their life. Where did they pull that out of? It's an easy way to get out of the topic and close the door and not address it any further. The reality is there are hundreds of these cases and hundreds of these cases throughout the world that I've written about. Well, I haven't written about all hundreds of them, but I've written about many. And I've talked about many right here. But in Sobering Coincidence, I talked about other countries as well where this is going on. Now, in Jelani's case, I don't know where they pulled the thread about suicide. I didn't see anything in any of the articles I read about it. This is the first time I've seen the FBI put up a reward for information. Maybe they're getting frustrated because they can't figure it out either. Because I know that they've been on a lot of the cases that I've looked at, written about. So somebody's starting to take it seriously. I'm very sad by Jelani's mom has to be putting up with some of the stuff that she is. Hello, David. Watch your videos and I've been very intrigued for your work for a long time. I lost my wife to suicide in 2018. We had been together since we were teens in '97. It wasn't her first attempt. She tried in 2010 after her mom passed away and was brought back with battled depression and physical mental pain daily. I can't imagine what life would be like living with the pain that causes someone to take their life. It'd be horrific. Horrific. Back to the letter. Some people say that people who do this are cowards or weak, but that is far from reality. My wife tried hard every day. Sure she did. But also blame the mental health system insurance as well. Shortly before she died, she checked herself in to get her meds lined out like she had done many times before and was discharged after insurance money ran out without her new meds that was prescribed. They were out at that time. She tried reaching out, but no luck. It's also very hard to see a doctor, as this can take weeks or longer at a time. I was fortunate enough that my kids were not little at the time. I couldn't imagine the struggle of having to raise little ones without a mom. My oldest son, who was 17 at the time, has bipolar but refuses meds or treatment and has spiraled out of control and down a bad path ever since, and I worry every day that he'll end up dead. He was always mean to his mom, and the day she did it, he had made her cry and she left the house to never return again. She went to her mom's grave and overdosed. I've had him in doctors and counseling since he was 5, and he was always fought against it, now totally refuses, and is now a drug addict, and I know he carries tremendous guilt, and I feel helpless. After my wife passed, I found an organization that is called Good Grief that offers free therapy sessions to those who have lost a loved one. It really helped me tremendously. And I've also had a support group that was for suicide survivors, which I went to until it ended due to COVID. You stop there for a second. Something called Good Grief Camp. It's in Kalispell. I actually donated to it last year. It's put on by a woman that I see that's a counselor to dealing with my grief. There's no doubt grief is a mental condition. And it's almost been a year and I'm still having trouble. And I always thought that I was a pretty strong guy. I've been told by psychologists when I got other jobs that my testing showed I was strong mentally. Losing a wife, having a son in a condition like that, I personally don't know how anyone could handle it. I don't know how I could. But the Good Grief Camp in Kalispell is a really good organization. I went to the camp last year and I was really impressed. Same letter. One of the emails you read recently about the guys who had a bird land and stare at them while hiking made me think to write this email. That was me. That happened to Angie and I. I don't know if what happened was a sign or it was completely random, but either way, it did make me feel comfort. While sitting on the steps a month or so ago after she passed in my garage, coming out of the house, a red bird flew in my garage and landed a few feet from me. I was sitting on the steps crying like I did often when this bird landed. I looked up and stared in amazement. It hopped around just chirping away for at least 20 seconds and flew away. made me feel some peace. Helped in my mind that it was a sign she was okay. Think about these things, and I think about Ben. To think I still don't need counseling. Yeah, I need it. As far as a couple other stories that are odd, but not 411 related, but I figured some way you might find these interesting. I have an older neighbor that is in his 70s and have lived by for years, and he is an honest and great man. Told me that when he and his brother were in their 20s, his brother passed away. At some point in his 40s, he had a medical emergency and was in the hospital. As he was being taken back for a procedure, he said he wasn't told that there was a chance he may not make it. He says he doesn't know if it was a vivid dream or what, but it seemed real. But after surgery and in recovery room, his brother walked into his room and sat in a chair next to his bed. Said they had a good conversation after talking while his brother stood up and said, "Brother, we'll see each other again. Now isn't your time." Walked out of the room. The other strange story comes from another old man that says his story is so unbelievable and insane, but swears it happened. It changed his life for the better. He had never been religious. He had been toying with the idea of going to church for years. He said he was in a stand alone, miles from anyone and anything, and was not having any luck. Deer stand, probably. He was also a heavy smoker. He said as he lit up a cigarette, he said out loud, "Lord, if you let me see a deer, I'll quit these cigarettes and get into church." He said a few seconds later he heard a voice that startled him, and he about fell out of the stand that basically told him he would see a deer. He said a few minutes later a whitetail calmly walked directly into a stand. He was in shock of what he had heard and what he saw, and he could not bring himself to shoot the deer. And walked around the tree he was in and continued on. I don't know if the voice was in his head or an actual voice, but it was loud and real. He quit smoking, and that is when he got into church and changed his life ever since. Well, I hope you get to see this and appreciate the many others who are discussing the mental health crisis and all other non-411 issues that are important regardless of what some of the miserable people say. Take care and have a good day. You know, the person you live with in your house, your significant other, they're your rock. They're the people you leverage when you're in need. And to think about that person taking their life. And then you're left alone to deal with your son. That's rough. It's really rough. I said before, it's a reminder again, NAMI, N-A-M-I. Took a 12-week course from NAMI on bipolar individuals and how to deal with them, how to meander around them. I would hope, if this man's watching, that he takes that class. It was better than any college class I've ever taken. It was eye-opening. Class was given by people inside the organization that had lived it. And I suppose it gave me some insight into Ben that I never had before. What he was coping with. Thanks for that letter. Hey Dave, I want to sincerely thank you for the work you do in a world where truth feels impossible to find. You've been a beacon of light for me. I'm truly so sorry for the loss of Ben. I don't know if this will be comforting or not to hear, but I wanted to share with you and him collectively have saved my life. For many years I've been plagued by suicidal thoughts. and how once I discovered your work, those thoughts started twisting into dark thoughts about wandering into these hot spots alone because I didn't care what happened to me. Or at least I'd be maybe possibly get a taste of the truth. Then you sharing your loss and me seeing this man I admired so much go through absolute hell. Finally able to get some perspective and see my life through the person who is to me. You would have been my mom. Could not imagine her having to go through that. And the more you shared your pain, the more mine changed. I still struggle with depression, but the everyday looping thoughts of suicide do not control me anymore, even in those depressive states. I wish your story could be different, but I will forever have so much gratitude for you and Ben through it. Thank you. Thank you. One other small thing I'd like to mention is about the people who hassle you about your videos and how you present them. I've come to the thought that the people who give you trouble are the people who want to live in a fake world and only come to YouTube to consume stories and not truths. This challenges their programmed minds, and I wish they could move on instead of using their low energies to attack you. Or they are blatantly attacking you because they know the truth and are incentivized to attack you and other truth tellers. We live in a strange world. I pray for your protection and that you keep being that light in the dark. So many of us would be so much more lost without you. Proud to be part of the village. Thanks. I'm trying. Next story. My name is Heather. I recently started watching your YouTube channel as a subscriber. I have my personal, almost missing story to share. First, I want to say thank you for all you do. You are doing countless families service by sharing their stories. You're doing a great selfless service to our communities by sharing and tracking these unusual cases. I just got done watching your latest YouTube video and it resonated with me. My parents told me about something that happened to me when I was about 10 months old. We were living with a friend in a small town in Wisconsin as my parents were preparing to move to California. This would have occurred in October of '75. My parents' friend was a nurse who worked the early morning shift at the local hospital. I was in a spare bedroom in a crib, and my parents were in another room. The nurse left for her shift that morning, as I am told, and had peeked in on me before leaving. I'm telling you that detail because what comes next is pretty unbelievable. The nurse checks on me and leaves, locking the front door behind her. My parents sound asleep in another room. Around 7:30, there's a loud knock at the front door. My dad wakes up and answers the door. There standing in the front of my dad is a police officer with me in his arms. Now, my parents told me that I was already walking at 10 months old. But how in the world did I get out of my crib, unlock the front door, shut the front door, end up with a police officer? My parents were told that a neighbor called and reported that a baby, me, were walking in the street. Dave, how is that possible? My parents said that they put me to bed with diapers, a t-shirt, and pajamas. When the officer found me, I had only my t-shirt and diaper on it and bare feet. This was in October. It dips into the 40s and 50s at night, and sometimes those are also daytime high temps. No one knew who I belonged to, so the officer took me door to door until he knocked on the door where my parents were staying. It's a miracle in so many ways that I did not get run over or become one of the missing. My parents were not into drugs or drinking or anything of the sort. My dad, in fact, had just finished going to school to become a pastor. I'm telling you all this because it is bizarre, and that case you just mentioned reminded me of this. I truly believe that my guardian angel was looking out for me that day specifically. Keep up the great work. I know a lot of stories just like that. It's hard to believe, but it happens. And how would someone that young even know how to unlock a door? Okay, next letter. Dave, I'm catching up on your last videos. I want to send encouragement and a patriot reminder. I'm 100% with you. This country is going down fast, and as a German living in this country, I'm baffled how quickly people are to comply. When my husband was alive, we chose to stay here because he wanted to serve his country and became a citizen. He passed away almost 10 years ago. I chose to stay here and raise our children in the greatest country in the world. COVID is an excuse to destroy our great country and turn it into communism. Coming to a head, my kids and I demonstrated with fellow Patriot parents tonight at a school district board meeting. We are fighting mask mandates, which truly means they sold our kids to the federal government. Yes, they get extra funding if they vow to follow CDC guidelines. Anyway, I wanted to enter the building carrying my flag. Dave, I wasn't allowed in. I had 2 police officers and a security guard tell me the flag is not allowed in the building. I told them I could remove the poles. They said no. I asked who made that rule. They said they didn't know. I reminded them that it's a public building and they said they were just enforcing the rules. Only when I said I am German carrying 2 American flags and trying to get into a public hearing, one police officer said he was German as well. I asked him to take my picture and put the flags, and I had to put the flags in the car. Dave, we love police and all first responders. I raised my kids to be proud Americans and know the Constitution. We demonstrate for armed forces and first responders on a regular basis because Americans have forgotten what the Nazis did, and we are very close. Sometimes we stand alone in front of Fort Carson demonstrating for their freedom. My kids don't care that they get up early to do this. I'm begging everyone to remember what happened in Nazi Germany. Most won't listen. Please continue to remind people. If I could, I'd give you a big hug because your videos are so raw and I can feel your pain through them. Much love. Wow. I know there's a lot of police officers that watch my channel. I hear from a lot of you guys and ladies, and I appreciate you very much. I think that there's going to be certain public officials, fascists, that are going to try to manipulate us, current and retired police officers, to do things in our heart that we know are not right. And in fear for your jobs, you're going to do them. And I'm asking you to really take a deep breath. Don't comply with an illegal order. If this lady took her flags off of their sticks, why can't she carry in a flag to a public meeting? It's a public meeting by our officials. Something is very wrong there. We need to start stepping up. Everybody, you get a chance, you start following a former CBS journalist who found that her computer was being monitored daily while she was at CBS. Cheryl Atkinson, Atkisson, Sharryl, Cheryl Atkinson. When she found out that she was being monitored by our government and CBS was being apparently, I'm not going to say this 100%, but appeared to be somewhat complicit and not real eager to get to the bottom of it, she ended up leaving CBS, and she has her own investigative team now. She's outstanding. You're going to find articles there about things that we are concerned about. And she speaks her mind. And she gets to the bottom line about what's going on. One of the examples is I forwarded one of her articles about the number of COVID deaths in the U.S. It's fascinating. She went out and she interviewed public officials that said those weren't the numbers we reported. And how somebody comes in a hospital with a gunshot wound and is COVID positive but shows no symptoms and they died. All of a sudden they're classified as a COVID death because the hospital gets more money for that. Something to be concerned about. The way these deaths are reported per Cheryl Atkinson. Follow her. She's a very, very good reporter. I greatly appreciate you guys being here. Please make sure you're subscribed to the channel. My website is Can-Am, like Canadian American, canammissing.com. You could follow us and get our books like NA North America, nabigfootsearch.com, and at Twitter, David Paulides at canammissing. Follow me there. And we have now approaching 200 videos on this channel, all backed up, ready to go someplace else if I get kicked off. But I want you to spend the time, follow us. If there's a missing case you're interested in, there's a good chance I've already covered it. Please check out the videos on our channel. And I'm being humble and saying that I'm greatly appreciative of each of you being here. I try to read every comment that's posted. I respond to many. And we're going to get through this. And it's going to take support from friends and neighbors and villagers for all of us to pull through. Hopefully in 10 years, this will be just a small flicker in our past and we'll be back on track as a country. In the meantime, all you have to do is read the comments from other villagers right here and understand how much care and love that we have on this great channel. So, thanks for being here. And read the #1 pinned comment on this video and you can see all the contact points for us. Be safe. Do something nice for somebody. Open a door. Help somebody at a store. Do something nice and it'll make you feel good about yourself. Have a great week.